Hello and welcome back to the online training courses on risk management for tour operators. In this course, we will talk about emergency preparedness plans. First, we will introduce what emergency preparedness plans are. We will then give two examples of emergency preparedness plans. Then we'll briefly talk about the role of the employee responsible for risk management in your company. Then we'll go over the next homework assignment and present the references this course is based on. So here we have our standard risk management system again. You have now developed procedures to minimize the likelihood and seriousness of your risks, your standard operating procedures. But you can, of course, never eliminate the risk completely. Accidents can and will still happen. So the next step is preparing for emergencies. This brings us to emergency preparedness plans. What steps should we take immediately after an accident? So what exactly is an emergency preparedness plan? It is a set of instructions that tells your staff, usually your guide, what to do right after an emergency. So for different types of emergencies, you will have different emergency preparedness plans. Often they will be similar, but they will have small, important differences. The plan should include step-by-step instructions for the guide on what to do, contact details of relevant emergency services such as police, hospital, etc., as well as the contact details of the responsible risk management employee in your company. Emergency preparedness plans should help and train your guide to respond quickly and calmly. If an accident occurs, the guide should, within a few seconds, be able to find the correct emergency preparedness plan and then be able to put the instructions into action. The most important part is that the guides must practice implementing the plans beforehand. Your guides must be very familiar with the plans before the tour. As the tour operator, you must distribute the relevant plans to your guides before a tour and make sure they understand them well. So what makes a good emergency preparedness plan? The plans should be easy and quick to read. They should be specific to the emergency. Different emergencies will require different instructions. For example, a client getting lost and a client having a heart attack. Those are two very different emergencies, so the instructions should be different too. However, often plans will be quite similar. Plans should also be specific to the geographical location. For example, there is a difference between losing a client in a mountain range and in the city. You have different circumstances, emergency services, etc. Finally, plans should be regularly updated. This is important if the emergency was dealt with poorly in the past. That may mean that the plan should be improved. Furthermore, as your company grows, you may identify new risks which need new emergency preparedness plans. So, for which risks do we need an emergency preparedness plan? At the minimum, all your medium and high seriousness risks should have emergency preparedness plans. You will remember that high seriousness means life-threatening injuries and/or high unhappiness, and that medium seriousness means injuries that require a doctor and/or medium unhappiness. For example, you will need emergency preparedness plans for a person getting a heart attack in the wilderness, which is probably high seriousness, and a person getting lost on a walking tour in the city, which we could say is medium seriousness. We will now give examples of emergency preparedness plans for two different risks using two different formats. Example 1. We will now give an example of a graphical emergency preparedness plan. Let's say that the emergency is that a person gets injured doing an activity, let's say hiking, and he or she requires a doctor. Please remember that this is an example and you may decide to do things differently. So, the accident occurs. A person gets injured hiking. The guide should first make sure the site is safe. If it isn't, clients should be moved to a safe site. Are your clients involved? The guide will need to respond to accidents and incidents even if they don't directly affect the clients. Let's say no. Your clients are not directly involved in the hiking accident. Another person, perhaps in another tour group, was injured. The guide should then attend to her clients. Perhaps they need trauma support or comfort after seeing the accident. The guide might then want to consider to call and inform the tour operator, because the accident could have been caused by unsafe conditions in the activity. The guide and tour operator will then have to consider whether they should continue with the activity. Is it safe for the clients to continue hiking, or would it be best to have an alternative activity? The final step is writing an incident report. We will discuss this more in Course 5. Let's go back to the second step. Are your clients involved? Let's now say yes, your clients are directly involved. The first step is to call the correct and relevant emergency service telephone number. The guide should then explain the location and nature of the accident to them. While waiting, the guide should then perform first aid appropriate to the injury and ensure the maximum level of comfort possible for the injured client. The guide will then have to write down details of the accident, such as location, number of injured clients, conditions at the site of the accident, etc. This could be important later when filling out the incident report. The guide then has to prepare for the arrival of the rescue teams, such as an ambulance, police, helicopter, etc. When the emergency services arrive, the guide should help them attend to and remove the injured client. If possible, a staff member should go with them, but the other clients must never be left alone at the site of the accident. The guide then has to attend to the other clients. Again, they might need to be comforted or reassured after witnessing the accident. The guide should then call and inform the tour operator of the accident. Finally, she should fill out an incident report. Example 2. We will now give an example of a written emergency preparedness plan. Written emergency preparedness plans may be preferable if you want to give more details to your guide. Let's now take a new example. Let's say the emergency is that a person gets lost in a mountain range. What step-by-step instructions should we give to the guide? She should first ensure that the other clients are all present and safe. She should then call the relevant emergency service telephone number, using the satellite phone if necessary, and communicate the location and the nature of the emergency. She should then prepare for the arrival of the search/rescue team. And she should attend to the other clients, as they may be affected by the emergency as well. They could be emotionally impacted. If possible, the staff members should go with the search/rescue team, but the other clients must never be left alone at the site of the emergency. The guide should then call and inform the tour operator's employee who is responsible in case of an emergency. Finally, she should file an incident report. You can see from these two examples that we just gave that emergency preparedness plans are often very similar, but they can differ in small important details, such as which phone numbers to call. Until now, we mainly discussed emergency preparedness on the ground by the guide. That is arguably also the most important part to get right. However, the role of the employee responsible for risk management in your company is also very important. Let's briefly look at the lines of communication when an emergency happens. When an emergency occurs, the guide will first be responsible. The guide should make the initial contact to the emergency services. The guide then calls you, the tour operator. Specifically, the guide calls the employee who is responsible for risk management in your company. As soon as this employee is informed, he or she will have to communicate with many different people. Where relevant, he or she will have to contact the emergency services, the hospital, the police, the client who was directly affected by the accident, the family of this client, the other clients that weren't directly affected by the accident, insurance companies, media, legal counsel, etc. Therefore, besides preparing the guide, it is important that the employee responsible for risk management in your company is prepared and ready to respond to emergencies as well. So, in emergency preparedness, what is the role of the employee responsible for risk management in your company? Before the tour, the employee should collect information from each client, including emergency contact details, so the contact details of a family member or spouse, for example. Medical insurance details of the client, as well as information on health and medical conditions. All of these details can be very important in cases of serious emergencies. In case of an emergency during the tour, the employee should be prepared to communicate with the staff. They should be able to answer the guide's questions and plan next steps together with the guide. Clients might want to return home ahead of schedule or do an alternative activity, so it's important to work out a plan together with the staff on the ground. They should also be prepared to communicate with the clients. This includes clients directly affected by the accident, as well as the clients that were indirectly affected. This can be very difficult if the client is critically injured or very disappointed. Your response in these situations is likely to play a big role in how the accident will affect your reputation. If relevant and appropriate, the employee should be prepared to contact the media and/or relatives of the clients. Again, a good response will help protect your reputation. Finally, the employee should be prepared to communicate with the involved services and institutions. So this includes the emergency services, hospital, police, insurance, the embassy of the clients, etc. For example, it is important that the tour operator makes sure the client is well taken care of at the hospital. Let's now quickly go over the homework assignment. Complete emergency preparedness plans, graphic or written, whatever you prefer, for each of your company's medium and high seriousness risks. You can download our emergency preparedness plan template on our website to guide you. Please send your assignments to riskmanagementfortourism@gmail.com. This course is based on materials from the following references. Thank you for your attention.